And I do see that we have, all members have returned, and we still have a quorum. The next matter we're going to call is for Lyle Keller. Mr. Keller, if you could come up to the table and sit to Ms. Mantle's left. Good afternoon, everyone. We are before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition for early termination of probation of Lyle Keller. This is OAH case number 2017-01-1100. The board's case number is LC-2011-956. My name is Tiffany King. I am an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to preside over this matter. May I please take the appearance of counsel?
Melissa C. Mantle, Deputy Attorney General.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Keller, you were present earlier this morning when I addressed the petitioners, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Do you have any questions before we begin this morning? We're now in the afternoon. I should stop saying in the morning. Okay. Thank you, Ms. C. Mantle. The floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Melissa C. Mantle, Deputy Attorney General. I'm appearing on behalf of the Attorney General pursuant to Government Code Section 11522, representing the people of the state of California. I'm here to assist the panel in fact-finding. My role is not adversarial, but is intended to protect the public interest. I'm here to ensure that the panel has adequate information from which to make a decision. May I approach with the exhibit packet?
Yes, please. I'll mark the petition packet as Exhibit 1.
And a copy was previously provided to petitioner. Included in the exhibit packet is the petition for early termination of probation dated December 21st, 2016, along with attachments in support of the request, which include a death certificate and 2 emails regarding job applications, and also a letter from petitioner. Stipulated settlement, along with the decision and order, effective October 22nd, 2012, with the attached underlying accusation in case number LC-2011-956. The decision of the petition for modification of penalty that was effective April 10th, 2015, in case number LC-2011-956, OAH number 2015-010485, psychological assessment dated June 13th, 2013, notice of hearing, and the license history certification. In regards to the background, the board issued petitioner licensed clinical social worker license number LCSW 21795 on November 24th, 2003. The registration expires on November 30th, 2017. On April 30th of 2012, an accusation was filed in case number LC-2011-956 based upon petitioner's conviction of driving under the influence with 2 prior convictions and for his dangerous or injurious use of alcohol on 3 occasions. The circumstances are that on December 10th of 2010, petitioner drove with a blood alcohol content of 0.20% or higher. And on February 28th of 2004, petitioner drove with a blood alcohol content of 0.08% or higher. And on December 28th of 2005, petitioner drove recklessly after consuming alcohol. Pursuant to a stipulated settlement, petitioner's license was revoked. However, the revocation was stayed and petitioner's license was placed on 5 years of probation. While on probation, petitioner was to comply with conditions of probation, including undergoing a psychological evaluation, enter a rehabilitation and monitoring program, abstain from the use of alcohol and controlled substances, and to submit to biological fluid testing, reimburse the board for costs of investigation and prosecution, reimburse the board for probation monitoring costs, and also filing quarterly reports. Petitioner has met all of his probation requirements with 1 positive biological fluid test result on February 19th of 2013 from drinking kombucha just spelled KOMBUCHA, which is an immune booster that contains a small amount of alcohol. Petitioner has paid $5,006 to date for probation monitoring costs, and cost recovery has been paid in full. Petitioner went before the board on February 25th of 2015 for termination of probation. Effective April 10th of 2015, petitioner was granted a modification to reduce the frequency of biological fluid testing to once per month. Petitioner is requesting that the board terminate his probation. Because the burden is on petitioner, I have no further statements, but would reserve the right to question petitioner.
Thank you. Mr. Keller, before we take your statement, do you have any objection to my admitting Exhibit 1 at this time? Exhibit 1 is admitted. Can you move the microphone a little bit closer to you, or maybe scooch in closer
Sure.
to the table?
How's that?
That's much better. Thank you, sir. If I could please have you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the evidence you will give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay. First, let me thank you for your time, Your Honor, and members of the committee. When I hit my bottom on 12/10 of 2010, I realized that I was an alcoholic. For that, I am humbled, and at the same time, I'm grateful. The reason I'm grateful is that working the 12 steps of AA, if you look carefully, the word alcohol is used only twice in all the 12 steps. It's used in the first step and in the 12th step. Everything else is about a spiritual program of recovery. And in our discussion today, and I do hope it's a discussion between us, I want to weave that thread of how the spiritual program of recovery has actually helped me cope with some pretty serious trauma and loss in my life recently. Had it not been for my own sobriety, had it not been for my ability to really understand that drinking is part of it, but the much deeper part of it is having a sense of a spiritual program of recovery, I don't think I'd be here today. I don't know where I'd be, but I probably wouldn't be in good shape. So with that said, what I'd like to do is use as my talking points the Board of Behavioral Sciences guidelines for petition for reinstatement of license or modification of penalty. In that document, it says the petitioner has the burden to demonstrate that he or she has the necessary and current qualifications and skills to safely engage in the practice of marriage and family therapy, clinical social work, or educational psychology. And then they talk. There's 5 factors that are considered, and I'd just like to briefly respond to each of those 5 factors. The first factor has to do with the length of time since the violation was committed. To date, I've been under Board of Behavioral Sciences supervision or probation for 4 years and 4 months. Second factor talks about prior disciplinary and criminal actions that have been taken against the petitioner by the board. And it talks about the petitioner's compliance with all terms of probation, parole, previous discipline, etc. I think that my record with the BBS speaks for itself. I have been 100% compliant with all the terms and conditions. I felt kind of stupid, frankly, about the mistake of using that kombucha tea as a supplement. I am a bit of a health nut. I had no idea. Just for the record, at that time, I also had an ignition interlock device on my car, and the ignition interlock device did not trigger anything. So that was also part of my missing the fact that, whoops, this has trace amounts of alcohol in it. The third factor mentioned in the guidelines has to do with the petitioner's attitude towards his or her commission of the original violations. I think that's really key, because I think what you're looking for is a person's character. You're looking for public safety, yes, but you're also looking for a person's character. What has changed inside of them that gives you a sense of confidence that they're not going to relapse, that they're not going to make the same mistakes? And I think that my brief letter to the board kind of sums it up when I said in reference to my wife's passing from depression and ultimately from suicide, I really, in my mind, cannot think of a bigger trigger for relapse. Being put abruptly in the position of being a single parent of 2 boys, of helping support them through that kind of loss and trauma and shock, and to do that with the bedrock of a spiritual foundation of recovery. Because if I didn't have that foundation, I don't think I would have been successful. So I think that speaks a lot to that item in terms of character. The next item talks about the petitioner's documented rehabilitative efforts. I did complete the Kaiser Intensive Outpatient Program in 2012. I completed the Drug Abuse Alternative Center's Intensive Outpatient Program in 2013. Between 2013 and today, I am an active member of AA. I have a Thursday night home group in my local community. Referring back to the spiritual program of recovery, I'm active in both, and this is very Northern California, but I'm active in the Stone Creek Zen Center, which is in my area, as well as the Center for Creation Spirituality. Both of those are spiritual communities that have been ongoing support for me, and they've both really stepped up at the time of crisis when my wife passed away. What else do I want to say about that? The co-founder of the Zen Center is actually an MFTI. She has been what I view as the equivalent of my individual therapist. She actually has a lot of experience in hospice work, which actually dovetails nicely with being a Zen person. So she specifically has been instrumental in helping me understand the whole grief, loss, death, and dying process, has helped me put into perspective that though it's a tragic choice on my wife's part, I have a sense of understanding about that now. So that's been a great help to me. In terms of my 2 boys who are now age 18 and 21, the 21-year-old is away at school in LA. I've been instrumental in helping him get individual therapy through the student health services, but frankly, it's somewhat paraprofessional in that many of those are graduate students. And I'm working now in navigating the Kaiser system to get an individual therapist through Kaiser Behavioral Health for him while he's down in LA. My 18-year-old is a senior in high school, lives with me full-time. He's had 2 individual therapists. The individual therapist that he sees currently, he sees weekly. I participate at the recommendation of his counselor in family therapy with him to help support him understanding the big why, because for an 18 and a 21-year-old, their notion of why could mom do that, they just have a different set of tools to understand and a different type of maturity that, I think I have more understanding than they do. And let's see. In terms of the petitioner's reputation of truth and professional ability and good character, since the original offense, I think I've discussed some about my own rehabilitative work. The AA community has been very, very supportive. I too used to view myself as sort of a functional alcoholic, a high bottom drunk, if you will. I mean, I've heard so many stories in AA about people who have lost their entire families. And over the years, the children come back. Or they get themselves off the street and they somehow have a life now that's productive, albeit, laying concrete sidewalks, it's still a productive life. Um, I was in no way wanting to be negligent around not creating a big packet for you today. I didn't feel like that was really necessary. I just felt like a conversation from the heart would suffice. So that's why the packet was so thin today. In terms of letters of support or documents from other people, I had done that previously when I stepped before the board a couple of years ago, referencing all my job applications. The only other thing I'll say is that part of the driving force for being here today for me is that I would like to be able to pursue other career opportunities, exiting out of the public sector work and becoming a clinical consultant to the special ed school district in Sonoma County, which is where I've been since 2001. I believe strongly that kids in residential care cannot and does not mimic the quality of a family. And I would like to help get kids step down out of residential care and back into a family environment. I think that's where real life happens. And I just feel personally and practically that there's a bit of an impediment in that job application process when the reviewer of the application or the interview process, I say to them, oh yeah, by the way, I'm on active probation with Board of Behavioral Sciences. There's also the secondary but real financial matter with the passing of my wife. Ironically, she was an MFT, and in 2015, she earned about $26,000. So that's a significant loss of income from that time period going forward. I'm happy to entertain any questions from the committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keller. Ms. Simianto, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. You're active in AA, correct?
Yes.
How often do you attend AA meetings?
A minimum of every Thursday night. Sometimes there's also a Sunday and Saturday 7 a.m. group that I participate in.
Are you attending any individual counseling or therapy?
Not at this time, no. I did reference that I was seeing the MFTI that specialized in hospice work.
Is that in regards to attending with your son?
No, that's just for me individually. I do periodically in the course of my son's individual therapy, they invite me in, but I'm not like an ongoing regular participant in his therapy.
Have you had any counseling or therapy in regards to your alcohol use?
Yes, what I referenced in the past, both the Kaiser IOP program and the DAC IOP program.
What was the second one?
Sorry about that, it's an acronym. It's Drug Abuse Alternative Center, DAAC.
When did you attend first the Kaiser counseling?
I did two separate programs, one of which was not recognized by the board because it was prior to sanctions here. So I did one in 2011 and another one in 2012.
Regards to the second one that you had mentioned, when did you attend that?
The Kaiser 2012,
Oh, I'm sorry, the acronym that you had stated.
oh, that, yeah, that was the Drug Abuse Alternative Center. That was a requirement, I believe, of probation at the time, and perhaps also a requirement of the board. That was completed in 2013.
When did you first start drinking?
Recreationally, due to peer pressure, approximately age 16.
And you have a sobriety date, correct?
Yes, 12/10 of 10. That was the date of my last arrest in front of my eldest son. And boy, let me tell you, getting arrested in front of your son really drives the message home.
When did you first start attending AA?
Well, I had a false start in my attendance and participation in AA back in 2004, which was the date of my first offense. I went, I checked it out. To be honest with you, I rationalized it and said, hey, what the heck? I'm an LCSW. What do they know that I don't know? So at that time, I was deep in my own rationalization and denial. It became very real for me the date of my last offense, which was 12/10 of 2010. And then I was able to see the simple truth that I was an alcoholic. It was a progressive disease. Clearly, time period from 2004 to 2010. As they say in the program, it takes what it takes.
So did you start attending AA in 2010?
Yes, on a consistent basis. My sponsorship started in 2012. I'm actively in touch with that same sponsor. His name is Paul Lupus. I have worked all the steps with him completely through once. And in terms of reworking the steps, I feel like every time I go to a meeting, I'm working the steps. I feel like that's an ongoing process.
You said that you went through all the steps once. Are you working the steps again or just attending the meetings?
I'm just attending meetings.
What has changed since you last appeared before the board on February 25th of 2015 that the board should consider regarding reasons why your petition for early termination should be granted?
Well, the biggest change is the loss of my wife. She had a serious depression. Actually, her mother has the same genetic marker. And yes, I actually participated in her care. I actively, for the last 3 years, when it became severe, I would go to the psychiatrist with her. And I think just to sum it up straight from the heart, it's a bit like being with a spouse who has a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. That's metaphorically what it felt like for me. And the fact that I chose my spiritual program of recovery, that I chose to stand in the light, to continue to be a good father to my kids, and to honor my own self and to honor her by staying clean and sober, I think speaks volumes to my commitment to recovery.
What has changed since your last appearance before the board in either your professional life or in your recovery? What change has there been in you?
Thank you for asking that, because that was a big piece I just realized I left out. My wife passed away on January 14th of 2016. Obviously, I took a big chunk of time off. When I went back to work, the first thing I did is I met with the team that I supervised. I supervised at that time literally the front door for the seriously and persistently mentally ill adults in Sonoma County. It's called the Access Team. So every day we're vetting psychosis, bipolar 1 and 2, meth-induced psychosis, schizophrenia, 5150, and we were kind of fused at the hip with our Psych Emergency Services unit. In fact, we were co-located and still are co-located with Psych Emergency Services. So I knew that I wasn't emotionally prepared to do that kind of work any longer. So I then went, after meeting with the team and telling them the truth of it, about what happened in my life, and that it's okay to talk about mental illness. It's okay to talk about sobriety. And so I told them what was happening for me and for my family. I then went to the mental health director and said, who was a very understanding person. I said, sir, I need to step down. I can't do this job anymore. I need to be very emotionally available, not just to myself, but to my 2 kids. And I just need to step down. You can park me anywhere you want, but it's not appropriate for me to do this type of work any longer. And he said, well, how about a lateral transfer to becoming the program manager of our DUI program? And I got another program tacked on because that's the county way. I also do the welfare to work program for mental health as well. But that was an unexpected gift of my own recovery, because the very people that I supervise today were my drug and alcohol counselors in the DUI program, not just once, but twice. And so there's a certain rapport, there's a certain integrity that the mental health director felt that I could bring forward by saying, hey, I used to be a client here, now I'm your manager, and that's okay too. So that's changed a lot. But I feel like public civil service, I've done it a lot, both here in Chicago and in Florida. I just feel like now, given what I've gone through personally, that seeing people change and helping people, if I can bring some of my own story to help people on an individual level, I'd like to do that. I'm not so sure about private practice at this point. I'm much clearer about wanting to work with kids and stepping them down out of residential care and back into a family environment.
And one last question. Have you been convicted of any offenses since you filed your petition for early termination?
No, I have not.
No further questions.
Thank you very much. I'll open it to the board members. Dr. Chu?
Thank you. Thank you for coming here, and I'm sorry about your loss. I just would like to know, through your previous therapy, what is your insight about your drinking? You know, like what makes you drink? What was the trigger? Because as you know, we worry about whether someone will reoffend or having problem again. So then the second question is, what kind of support system? You mentioned about AA, but you're not in therapy right now. So I just want to know what kind of support system to prevent you from drinking again.
Sure. To the first point, the reason for the drinking behavior in the first place, I think in doing my own therapy and really looking at that, I think it comes back to an adolescent sense of entitlement. Work hard, play hard, to use an old cliche. I do view it as a very wrong source of stress reduction. I do many, many different things today to cope with stress in a healthy way. I'm very outdoorsy and athletic. In terms of current support system, I mentioned the Stone Creek Zen Center community, which is literally 5 minutes from my house. I participate in that each Sunday, as well as 2 mornings a week in which I go and sit and do meditation. Support network through my wife's brother, who lives just an hour away. We raised kids together. Their son was born 1 year later than our youngest son. So we've shared the journey of parenthood together. And his loss of his sister, my loss of my wife, through that sort of connection of grief, it also can be a gift of support. So we've supported each other in that way. The AA community, I've been in the same home since 2001 with my family, so there is certainly a sense of solid network of neighbors, friends. I've been very upfront with my coworkers, and select handful of those have really stepped up and been ongoingly supportive. So in no way, sir, do I feel isolated. Yes.
Hi, just as a follow-up to what you were just speaking about, your support system, you mentioned the AA community, but you didn't mention your sponsor directly. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your relationship with him and how often you connect.
Right. I think the reason I haven't mentioned him much is I was thinking more about the difference between him as my AA sponsor and formal psychotherapy. He's actually worked at, I think, Lytton Springs way back in the day as a drug and alcohol counselor. We have an inside joke where I call him my spiritual advisor as well as my sponsor, because he was instrumental in teaching me, yes, putting down the alcohol is a good first step, but it's truly only the first step. So he is an active support for me. I go to his house and meet with him. He lives about 10 or 12 miles away. So I do count on him.
How often do you connect? Is it weekly or?
Weekly, by phone, I'll go to his house. I mean, he just got back from Thailand, so I haven't seen him in about 4 weeks now because he was traveling
Yeah.
with his wife.
Okay, but normally about every week.
Minimum,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Brown? Ms. Wong?
Just a quick question. So you talked about the spiritual program that you participating. Can you just give a little bit more substance? What is it all about, and how does it help you with your grief and loss process?
Sure. I mentioned 2 programs. One was the Stone Creek Zen Center, but the other was the Center for Spiritual Living. That's actually a place that my wife and I both felt at home. And in her own attempts to cope with her longstanding depression, I would encourage her through my own recovery work to say, look, we've got to have a sense of something outside of yourself, a sense of connection to a higher power. Though the disease process or the illness may be different, there's actually similarities there. So she was an active member. In fact, she sang as a volunteer choir member. They have a very large 80-member choir. She sang there because that was one of the ways in which I think she felt connected to her higher power, or her God. And that community has been, over time, very supportive of me as well. And I attend services there, and, you know, I tear up, obviously, when the choir sings, but that's the way it is.
So how is it also for you, I'm just curious about, the grief and loss happening, with your son, when, in this process, I can imagine, being a single parent is just not easy. So how is it for you, how you deal, coping with the stress?
Right. I think it's a real testament to my wife and to me, the functional parts of me, that both my boys have a strong foundation to operate from. Neither of them dropped out of school. Neither of them ran themselves in the ditch in any sort of metaphorical or literal way. And our extended families are very much active in our lives. They're grandparents on both sides. My mom's no longer alive, but it's like, in a way, the extended family realizes that at a moment of loss like this, it's very important to band together. So they have, like, just on the fly said, look, we're buying an airline ticket, have the kids come out for spring break. That's what my youngest is doing from April the 12th to April the 24th. He's going to go see both his cousin and his grandparents in the Chicago area on their dime, just because they know that that kind of ongoing emotional support is important. Yeah.
Dr. Brew?
Thanks. May have missed your answer to this, or maybe I was looking for an answer and you didn't say it, so I'm going to check. I thought it was an interesting irony that your change of employment went from working with a more intense mentally ill patient group to an addiction environment. And you talked about like how ironic it kind of was that you moved from a client to in a supervisory role.
Right.
How has that work affected you personally, the shift in population?
Well, I certainly didn't plan it, but it feels like being the program manager at the DUI program, there's a certain level of authenticity because, as a manager, what happens? Difficult clients are brought to you, uh-oh, something happened, this person's going south, can you help me out? And I have a sense that having walked the road myself and having experienced the gifts of AA, that it makes me a better clinician. It gives me a certain sense of empathy and a certain sense of clarity that I wouldn't have had if I were just looking at it from kind of a one step removed academic sort of filter or lens. So it was a conscious request on my part to say to the mental health director at the time, I can no longer work for the Access team. I just can't vet suicide, psychosis, and depression every day. It's not healthy for me. It's not healthy in terms of my availability to my kids. And, you know, it's just not appropriate self-care in terms of my own relapse prevention.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be participating in denial in my book.
So you didn't answer it, so I'm going to flip it over.
Okay.
How did it affect you personally? Like, are you learning anything, not about your professional work?
Oh,
Are you
okay.
personally growing, working as a program manager with the DUI folks?
I am personally growing when I see the old me in the clients that are struggling. So when I see the old me that used rationalization and denial, when I see that part of the old me in the client that's in the room getting really pissed off about whatever it may be, I'm like, oh, I remember that. Not exactly, but I think you get my drift. So I see how far I've come, and I think that's been a valuable, unexpected gift.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Pines?
There we go. Do you feel now that you're moving to, I don't know if you've thought of it this way, but moving to the residential youth programs, you have gained some understanding of them from your loss? Because I've worked with young people mentally ill, and when we really get to know each other, they talk about what their families did in abandoning them.
Right.
And you really understand loss
Mm-hmm.
through your own choosing, but you have something to bring to them.
Sure.
Because you're going to get it when they are angry and
Mm-hmm.
even weepy. Once I understood what that core pain was about, it helped to be able to talk about it with them.
Right.
Nobody else gets it.
Right.
And I want to compliment you. I remember when you were here before, and I think you have a presence more authentic this time than you did before. And I'm sorry for how you got there,
Right.
but you are more grounded in what the human side of it all is.
Thank you.
Coming back.
Any other questions from the board? Ms. Mantle, do you have any additional questions?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That does conclude the hearing in this matter. The record is closed and the case is submitted. Thank you very much, Mr. Keller.
Thank you.
If you could be sure to get the court reporter detail, she has a sheet for you before you. Thank you. And the next matter that we will call is the petition by Melissa Dartaroglu. One second here. Okay. Good afternoon. We are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition for early termination of probation of Melissa Zartaroglu. This is OEH case number 2017-020084, and the board's case number is AP-2012-1602. My name is Tiffany King. I am the Administrative Law Judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings who's been assigned to preside over this matter. We do have, the board members have identified themselves previously, and we do have a quorum present. Ms. Seamantle, if I could take your appearance for the record.
Melissa Seamantle, Deputy Attorney General.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Targlu, you were also present when I addressed the petitioners off the record this morning, correct? Do you have any questions about the proceeding before we begin? Okay, thank you. Ms. Seamantle.
My name is Melissa Seamantle, Deputy Attorney General. I'm appearing on behalf of the Attorney General pursuant to Government Code Section 11522, representing the people of the state of California. I am here to assist the panel in fact-finding. My role is not adversarial, but is intended to protect the public interest. I'm here to ensure that the panel has adequate information from which to make a decision. May I approach with the exhibit packet?
Yes, please. I'll mark the packet as Exhibit 1.
A copy was previously provided to petitioner. Included in the exhibit packet is the petition for early termination of probation dated November 22nd, 2016, along with attachment to the petition. Order of dismissal in the case of People versus Melissa Zartaroglu in the matter, in the case number 5PN0497. 3 letters of support, the decision and order with the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order in case number AP-2012-1602 that became effective on August 7th, 2014. Psychological report, 6 letters from petitioner's therapist, 6 documents entitled quarterly reports, the notice of hearing, and license history certification. In regards to the background, on September 18th of 2013, a statement of issues was filed under board case number AP-2012-1602. On July 8th of 2014, a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order was adopted by the board, which became effective on August 7th of 2014. The decision granted petitioner a marriage and family therapist intern registration number and placed petitioner on probation for 3 years. As stated on August 7th of 2014, the board issued petitioner marriage and family therapist intern registration number IMF 81663. The license is valid until August 31st of 2017. The statement of issues that was filed was based upon petitioner's conviction of a substantially related crime, false statement on a license application, commission of acts involving dishonesty, fraud, or deceit, and violations of provisions of the Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist Act. Circumstances are that on August 21st of 2009, petitioner was convicted of 1 count of trespass in violation of Penal Code Section 602, Subdivision K. Petitioner was placed on probation in order to serve community service. On February 12th of 2012, the court dismissed the matter pursuant to Penal Code Section 1203.4. The criminal case was based upon petitioner taking several pieces of jewelry from a department store without paying. The total value of the jewelry was $218. On or about March 22nd of 2012, petitioner made a false statement on her application for licensure by failing to disclose her criminal conviction by answering no to the question that asked if the applicant had ever been convicted of, pled guilty to, or pled nolo contendere to any misdemeanor or felony, including convictions dismissed under Penal Code Section 1203.4. Pursuant to the stipulated settlement, the intern registration was issued to petitioner, revoked, and the revocation was stayed with 3 years of probation. While on probation, respondent was to complete a psychological evaluation, participate in ongoing psychotherapy at least once a week, complete a law and ethics course, and reimburse the board for its probation monitoring costs. Petitioner has met all of her probation requirements and has paid $2,400 for probation monitoring. Petitioner is requesting that the board terminate her probation. Because the burden is on petitioner, I have no further statements, but would reserve the right to question petitioner.
Thank you. Mr. Targaloo, do you have any objection to my admitting Exhibit 1 at this time?
No.
Exhibit 1 is admitted, and whenever you're ready. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say.
Sorry.
Sorry. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the evidence you will give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. And this time for real, please.
Well,
go
first
ahead.
of all, thank you for your time and opportunity. So I'd like to give a little bit background before I talk about the incident. So,
Just slow down how
sorry,
fast you're
I'm so
speaking.
nervous.
Thank
It's
you.
my first time being here. Okay.
Okay. Sometimes it helps to take a breath after every couple of sentences, and then you know we're all caught up with you.
Okay. So I'm originally from Turkey, and incident happened in 2005. So I moved to the country in 2001, so I was fairly still new, and it was kind of like a cultural shock, and it wasn't a very smooth transition for me. Even though I moved with a family, and I moved for the purpose of continuing our education with my sister, and for a better opportunity, and so things wasn't really smooth for me for the first couple of years. So, my English wasn't good. I had to wait a year for residency and took some English classes, and then had to find a job. That was kind of difficult, transportation. And then after a year, I decided to go back to school. So I quit my job and hope to find something part-time where I can attend school more part-time as well. But pursue my career, which was studying psychology, has been always my passion. Since 8th grade, I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to pursue being a therapist. So a couple of things wasn't going right. I had, family conflicts. My grandpa and grandma, who was living with us at the moment, he was sick, and we were often visiting hospitals. I just was depressed. I was in a good term of my life, and had some father issues. He wasn't available. So all those things I think came along. Oh, I forgot to mention that I was also helping running my mom's business because she didn't speak English well, and we had cleaner agency, so I was helping her with the business, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I was actually wanting to do more like a behavioral therapy, which I have done for 8 years, working with special need kids, ABA. So I was trying to pursue that at the same time, having arguments here and there. So one day, on 2005, it was just after school, and I just was not in a good mood. It wasn't a good day for me, and I went to this store, and I think I was just seeking something. I don't know what it was, but I was just so unhappy and trying to fulfill my life with something. And I just, tried few jewelries on, and it wasn't that I needed jewelry, or, because my dad is in the jewelry business, and it wasn't I was fascinated, but I liked the idea that something was making me happy. So, and I tried them on, and it really made me happy for temporarily, and it felt good. And I just made a poor choice, made a very bad mistake, and decided to keep them instead of obviously paying for them or taking off on me. It was a pair of earrings and some bracelets, silver jewelry, which costed about $218. Yes, I made a mistake. So, and I just decided to walk out with it, and then I noticed that the security was coming after. So of course I stopped, and they pulled me to the room, security room, and they put me handcuffed. And of course, like I was just like, what just happened? I was devastated and so scared. And I just was never in that situation. And it was obviously never my intention to do that. But all of a sudden, I find myself in that situation. And of course, I'm taking the full responsibility of like making poor decision and not thinking the consequences. I'm sorry, but I was stupid at the moment. So I asked them to not to call cops because, you know, that moment was kind of like awakening for me that I realized, oh my God, this is going to affect my career, like period. And of course, how do I tell my parents, which I haven't, and it's been my secret for the past 12 years. And sorry. So they called officers. They came. Right.
You need a moment?
Sorry.
Okay, it's okay.
They took me to station, and because I was never in that situation before, I didn't know what to expect. So I was in the station for a few hours. Then I was released. But because I'm new in the country and never ever imagined myself in this situation, I didn't know like what was coming, what was gonna happen. So for some time, I just went home. They didn't tell me anything. I didn't know. So I always like thought that the cops were gonna like knock my door one day and take me back. I had that fear for a long time, and a few months passed by. I applied for this job that required for me to get live scan. So in the live scan, when it came back, they told me that there's something in my record arrest that I can't possibly get the job. So then I realized the seriousness of this act. Then I told them, I'm like, okay, what can I do? So they told me to, go to court. And so I was so like helpless because, here I'm arrested. It's my secret. No one knows about it. And I have to deal with this. And I wanted to take full responsibility because I knew what I've done was incredibly wrong. So then I went to the court, get the report, and they actually told me that I even had a warrant. So if I get a traffic ticket, they could have easily take me back. Because I didn't receive any paperwork from the police station or from the court, I didn't know what was the next step up until I looked through. So I wanted to resolve this issue. I hired a lawyer to help me to guide me through what do I need to do, clean my file, because I knew I didn't want this to affect my career. And again, psychology was something that I always had passion to, and I just wanted to pursue with no issues. So my lawyer had a court date, and I had to pay a fine and wait 2-year probation. After I followed through with that, my lawyer was able to get my file expunged. They lowered the crime to misdemeanor, which actually I was never convicted, but it was a crime to reduce to misdemeanor. After the expungement, my lawyer suggested that in the application, from this point on, I could possibly put no to the, questions, have you ever been convicted? Because my file was expunged and it was never conviction. And I did, without knowing that I was supposed to explain what happened. So after graduation and I had to wait my expungement, which was in 2012, it resolved. Then I applied, and I was so excited to be able to get my intern number and start working on my career. In my application with BBS intern number, I got denied for the first time. And then when I read, I understood that I was supposed to provide an explanation of what happened, and I did with written. So second time I got denied. So this time I had to reach out my lawyer, saying that, can you please help me? Because it was referred as dishonesty, but it was never my intention to be dishonest to the board. It was as I was advised to, as I knew that it was no longer going to be an issue as it was expunged. So my lawyer submitted a letter to board, but I was denied again. This time, of course, I was devastated because, all these things are happening. I'm losing time. It was by that time, it was like 2014. So, and then I had to hire another lawyer to help me with my case and receiving my intern number because this is the step I needed to pursue to get licensed and, help people as a therapist. So my second lawyer was able to get my intern number with, being under probation. So, and as soon as I received that letter with my intern number, I followed all the terms and conditions that it was asked to me in the statement. And I did my best to finish everything was asked within the year because I took it very seriously. And as I said, I think past 12 years has been like a hell for me. And I've done a big mistake, but there was no way of going back. So I just, of course, always try to do best to correct my mistake. So yeah, ever since then, I followed the law, obeyed the law, and completed what it was required. Paid payments on time. I'm still attending psychotherapy weekly. Turning paperwork on time. So it's been over 2 years now, 2 years and maybe 5 months that currently I'm requesting to be early termination for my case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Seamantle, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. How many times did you submit an application for licensure?
Twice.
The first time that you submitted the application, you submitted an explanation in regards to your conviction, is that correct?
First time I didn't because I just selected option no because I didn't know. I believe I was supposed to explain what happened. So after the denial, when I was informed, second time I applied and this time with an explanation and with my lawyer's letter.
Thank you for the clarification. That you've worked in behavioral therapy for 8 years. When did that start and where did you work in behavioral therapy?
My first company was California Psych Care. I believe that started, I guess, 2003.
What was your position at California Psych Care?
Behavior therapist.
Sorry, what was the first word?
Behavior therapist.
Thank you.
And you worked there for 8 years?
No, I worked there about 2 years and then I switched companies. Yeah.
What was
Total 8 years.
What was the company that you worked for after California Psych Care?
I believe it's Applied Behavior Analysis, company's name.
And how long did you work there?
About 3 years.
What was your position there?
Behavior therapist.
Where did you work after applied behavioral analysis?
I forgot the company's name. There's one more, and then my recent job. Sorry.
Just speak up a little bit and a little slower again.
Yes.
Thank you.
I forgot the name of the third company. I'm sorry.
And do you recall the position that you held there?
Yes, I was a supervisor there.
What type of supervisor?
I was training therapists. Again, it was a behavioral therapy, ABA position, but this time I was doing parent training, training therapists to how to work with kids in special need, and I was overseeing cases and I had more responsibility providing reports.
Question 12 of the petition application asks what actions you have taken to rehabilitate yourself. You had mentioned in your application about actions you have taken regarding your professional life, but you don't mention anything regarding rehabilitation for the criminal offense that you committed or your act of dishonesty toward the board. What have you done to rehabilitate yourself in regards to your criminal offense and your acts of dishonesty?
I seek a psychotherapy weekly, and so we discussed this case with my therapist, and I want to more talk about what I learned about myself, because even though it appears that it was a dishonesty, it was not an intentional dishonesty from my end, so it's kind of hard for me to relate to that, to what happened in reality, because I was advised to be put no. So it was never intentional. I would never risk anything like that for my profession. But I have a great social circle. I have friends. I do meditation. I work out. I'm mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy person. But most importantly, I learned from my mistake, and I understood what was underlined my actions, and I became more conscious and tried to work on those.
You have discussed the circumstances of your criminal case with your therapist, is that correct?
Yes.
Previously in your testimony, you stated that your lawyer had said that, quote, you could possibly say no to the conviction. And now you had said that you were advised to say no in regards to your conviction. Could you please explain the discrepancy between those two statements?
Yes, it wasn't a possibility. It was, he told me to put no, because the definition of expungement is erased from the file, and so he told me I could put no since it's no longer going to be in my file, and it was not going to be showing like it wasn't conviction like a crime or arrest. So in fact, I have his letter in my file over here. I just followed his advice, but of course I was shocked and disappointed once I find out that I was supposed to, put a yes and explain, which I wouldn't mind doing it if I knew that I was supposed to. So.
Did you receive a copy of the order for dismissal after that was granted in February of 2012?
Yes.
And did you read the order for dismissal?
Yes.
And did you see on there that it states Penal Code Section 1203.4 on the letter of dismissal, order of dismissal?
Yes.
And did you fill out the application for licensure?
Yes.
And did you read on there that it said that you were to include any convictions that were dismissed under Penal Code Section 1203.4?
Yes.
Your therapist states that you have been working on skills for processing anger. What skills have you developed?
Breathing skills, journaling, relaxation techniques, which I practice meditation. I exercise 3 times a week. Acceptance, because I'm slowly forgiving myself of what I've done. I felt like I just fell into deep black hole, and all these years, for the past 12 years, I've been trying to climb up, and it's been a difficult journey, and I didn't see this was coming. So it just took me some time to forgive myself. So I worked on that. I'm still working on it.
What information can you provide to the board to ensure the board that you will not commit a criminal offense or an act of dishonesty again?
Yes, I would never ever do crime. that especially would put people in jeopardy. It was a mistake, and it was my mistake. I took full responsibility. It was wrong. So again, there's consequences of all the actions that we do, and I learned that in hard way. So from this point on, from that day on, I've been very careful in understanding what one's action can cause and how it can affect, one's like mental health, their life. I mean, this was big for me. This was just a test that I had to go through, and I learned from my mistake, and I would never ever put my profession in jeopardy like that.
One last question. Have you been convicted of any offenses since you filed your petition for early termination?
No.
No further questions.
Thank you. We'll open it for questions from the board members. Dr. Chu?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. You just mentioned that now you understand, or you understood what underlie your action. And so when you look back, you kept saying it is a mistake, but what was your understanding now through therapy that answer the question why? Because on the surface you said your father had in the jewelry business. There's no reason why you did what you did. So I think it would help us a lot if you tell us what you're understanding now, how you did what you did, or why you did what you did.
So at the time, I mentioned that I was new to the country, and it was totally different culture. I didn't know anybody. Schooling was difficult. I was having a hard time understanding the school subject. Having difficulty making friends because there were a lot of groupings. So everything was affecting me at the moment. The illnesses at home, the job that I didn't want to be involved. So at the time, I didn't know how to deal with those feelings. I wasn't listening myself. I was just, I think, ignoring my needs. And I was just, I think covering up with continuing daily things, but, continuing being upset. So I was in need of something, some type of help that I didn't know how to ask for. So unfortunately, it happened to be that those jewelries that made me feel good for the moment. So I wish I could have been more aware, and I would have been able to seek help rather than engaging, such bad action, because I would have never think myself in this position, and it cost me 12 years. So I would never risk it if I knew better. Yeah.
A follow-up question. So all the issues you mentioned, are those issues still exist today? Or if some of the issues still exist, like the alienation or whatever issue there is, do you feel like through therapy you have developed the coping skill to deal with it? So, you won't, run into that same situation, make the same mistake again.
Yes, I've definitely developed coping skills. I've been practicing for years now, and I'm a better person now. And through this process, I learned more about myself too. I became a stronger person that I didn't think I was, and it was hard to keep the secret from everyone because I just had to try to deal with everything by myself because it was such shame, and humility, and so the shame took a long time for me to forgive myself, and my parents still don't know because it's not something I can share with them. So I'm a better person now, and the issues are no longer existing today. I'm a better therapist, a better person, and most importantly, I accept what happened and I was wrong from day one. I just didn't know what was coming, how I could have handled it, but I've handled it with my best. And since that day, I just try to make everything better for me, for my future, knowing that it was wrong. And I do have, a great social circle. I have a lot of friends now. Back then I didn't. I was so lonely and I was just in search of something. But today, no, I'm accomplished. I have, everything that I can ask for, except my license.
Ms. Ashley? Let's talk.
I do have a question, but it's regarding something that the ALJ said. Am I allowed to ask her a question? My question is in regard to something that the ALJ said. I'm sorry, yes, the DAG, yes. Okay, so were you reading earlier when you said, oh, did you read on here that you need to disclose any convictions that were set aside? Were you reading part of the application for licensure? What were you reading when you said?
That is in regards to the information that is in the accusation, in regards to the question that was completed on the application for licensure with misleading information, false information.
I'm asking because I'm not quite sure I understand.
I think I know what you're
Okay.
asking. So the part that you read about you have to disclose even if it's been expunged under 1203.4, is that coming from the initial application
Yes.
for licensure and not the petition for
Correct.
modifying
Correct.
probation?
Yes, that is in regards to the original original application for licensure.
So that statement is on the application for licensure.
Correct.
Okay, so now I have a question for her. Okay, thank you. So I'm looking at your petition for reinstatement, and question 11, second paragraph, second sentence, says, I was arrested but never convicted.
Right.
So can you just explain that statement?
So I was arrested, and then I was let go that same day after being in the station for a few hours. And then up until I applied for a job, I didn't find out that this was going to affect my my career, my future this way. And then I seek help, and I find a lawyer to help me with this case. And he got a court date to find out what happened and how can we correct this. So at the court, there was a fine I had to pay, and then they put me on the probation for 2 years. But that arrest turned to a misdemeanor, trespassing, at the court. And then it was expunged after 2 years of being probation, and the fine was paid. So yes, once it was expunged, I was told that I no longer had to worry about the job applications because again it was expunged, and I was never really convicted of anything, so it just kind of happened in the same day.
So in summary, I just want to make sure I'm understanding you. You're saying that you don't feel you were ever really convicted.
Well, I'm looking at my lawyer's statement, and
Yes, yes.
yeah, and over there it also indicates that it was not a conviction; it was just an arrest. If yeah, I couldn't see.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Okay. I think I understand where you're coming from. Thank you.
Ms. Brown? Wong?
So let's change the direction a little bit. So, so in your psychotherapy sessions, you've been working with your therapist for your anger and the frustrations. And tell me, if you get any insight, where these angers and frustrations coming from.
So during the psychotherapy sessions, I learned that what lies under anger and frustration is, profound disappointment, and I understood that, and it was true. I had, some family issues, especially towards my dad, who was physically there but emotionally was never available. So I had a lot of resentment, I think, over him over years. That to me, it felt like he was not a good father, like he wasn't there for us when we needed. And so, yeah, I mean, when I mentioned family issues, it was that my father's issue. So we worked on that. I do have a good relationship with him right today. So whereas before we wouldn't have much communication and he wouldn't be available emotionally. And through the therapy, I learned how to cope with my disappointments, how how I can be kind to myself, how I can accept, what happens, how to deal with like difficult situations, how to like being able to calm myself and accept and, kind of let go. Yeah, so it helped a lot. We did a lot of gestalt and talk, chair therapy, and so yes, I was able to resolve issues.
So, so that's really wonderful that you're working on this area. So on the other side, do you have any, do you feel angry, that the board put you on probation?
Not anger. I was disappointed in the beginning, especially after being denied for the second time, especially after I tried to explain, because again, it was not an intentional dishonesty as I was labeled. It was told that it was dishonesty. So that was kind of hard for me to like understand, but I did over time. And again, I just, did whatever the step was necessary for me to get what I needed it to be, because again, psychology is my passion and I want to pursue. So, and I this mistake 12 years ago, I didn't want it to be affecting my life any longer. So, but I understand from the board's perspective.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Brew?
Thank you. Just for the record, I don't blame you for putting no on the conviction thing. I'm constantly helping my students and telling them their lawyers are wrong and that they need to put yes. And they're like, no, but my lawyer said I should put no. I'm like, no, you put yes.
About that,
And
yeah.
you put a letter. So that's less of a concern for me. I understand that logic. What's harder for me to understand is, on the one hand, I know how a nice set of earrings or a new outfit can make me feel better and give a nice dopamine hit when I'm not doing well. But I'm struck by the choice to steal them as opposed to just buying them. Do you have a sense of why didn't you just buy them? Because you still get the dopamine hit.
Yes, I know. I don't know. Well, this is gonna sound silly probably, but when I was like 7, 8 year old in Turkey, we with like friends that I had, we would like go to market and maybe like play around and steal a chocolate and just like kind of make fun with that and like be happy. I kind of thought about this like after, but maybe I was kind of seeking that type of like excitement. I know it doesn't sound right, but it doesn't sound logical and it's wrong. I just probably thought that probably nothing is gonna happen. I mean, I just wasn't thinking right at all, and I made a bad choice, and I wasn't even logical. I think in the moment I was just so like. I don't know where my mind was, but I thought it would be okay to do that.
Well, the childhood thing actually answers it, right? Because if that's what you did as a kid and that was your idea of fun and, and you're a kid and
I
you
was
don't
thinking
really
that, I
know
think.
better, then it's regressing back to that, I think. That makes
With
sense.
an exception, I was an adult when I did that, but
Yeah.
still.
The last thing I wanted to check with you about is who knows about this event and who doesn't know?
So the psychiatrist who evaluated me knows it. My psychotherapist knows it. In fact, she found out about maybe like recently 2 years ago. I kept from her. I met her in 2011, but I was just like ashamed. I couldn't disclose this to anybody, and that's all. That's all. No one else knows it. Not my sister, not my family.
Not your
just
friends?
within me.
Colleagues?
Oh no, no one.
What would happen if people knew?
It's very humiliating. It's very I'm very ashamed of, and it's very difficult to like explain the situation to others. Maybe I have a little bit of like fear of being judged. I mean, especially when we're seeking like new employment, it's kind of hard to explain this to like new employer who doesn't know me, and which I don't blame them if I just say that this happened like 12 years ago, and I'm currently working on it. So I've got denied 3 times from an employment once they heard my story, and it's just very difficult. It's not something nice to share. I'm working on it. I'm still, I'm trying to close this book. To be honest, I just don't want to have to be faced anymore. I've dealt with my best, but it's still there.
Yeah, you're not done yet.
Done.
You're not even close. My hope for you is that you can shift from a feeling of shame to a feeling of guilt. Instead of you're a bad person, I've done a bad thing. And that you would be able, in fact, it would be in your benefit to tell your employers up front. Certain jobs, no matter what, they just have a hard and fast rule. But in other positions, if you say, hey, I have this arrest that happened 12 years ago, I want to lay it on the table ahead of time, then they would be much more forgiving than discovering it on their own. So my hope for you is that you can continue to do this work so that you can feel an appropriate guilt without feeling the enormous shame, and that maybe there was someone in your family you could trust to share this with, so you don't have to be so alone in trying to work through it. I think getting that positive regard from someone you love and care about might be helpful for you. Thank you.
Ms. Pines, is there anything further from the board? You?
Just one more question. Let's say if the board decided to terminate the probation, will you still be seeing your therapist?
Repeat one more time. Can you repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
I said if this board terminate your probation, will you still be seeing your therapist?
I might be seeing her in moderation. Right now, I'm seeing her weekly. Even though we met most of our goals, I might continue seeing her weekly, not weekly, bi-weekly.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Council, do you have anything further?
Yes, just one question. Does your current employer holding hands know of the disciplinary action?
Yes, in fact, they submitted a letter after they reviewed the stipulated settlement.
Thank you. No further questions.
So if there's nothing further, then that concludes the hearing in this matter. The record is closed and the case is submitted. Thank you very much. Please be sure to get the sheet from the court reporter before you leave.
Okay, that's the last one. Does the board need a break? Okay, so we'll just. Okay, moving on with the agenda. We have come to item number 6, which is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone? Okay, moving on. Suggestions for future agenda items. Anyone from the board? Okay, is that all right? Moving on. We are now going to adjourn to closed session at 2:41. We will come back at the close of that to adjourn. So we are now closed.